that had multiple failures within the parking lot of the DMV. It was a 2-inch steel line, and we replaced it with 6-inch PVC, so that was also completed in the month of August. And then the parking lot was redone and restriped, so that will improve that area there. We do have scheduled jack and bore for a 20-inch water line. That's going to be on MOK in Grand. It is part of the BNSF triple track project that they have scoped, and that's to get a new water line through there that'll be cased throughout their right-of-way to allow for that track at some point in the future when they continue that project. Other things on the horizon is our Sandia to North 40 water line. We have plans to take the wells that currently go to the Sandia high tank and take those over to our North 40 pump station near Green Acres. So that's going to require a pretty lengthy water line installation. And we did give notice of award to J&H Services, and they'll be using CDM Smith. It's a design build project. So, and substantial completion for that project is April 30th of next year. So hope to have that in place and ready for our pumping season next year. And really the only thing else of note is, you know, I think at the last meeting, we had talked about our reintegration as far as bringing employees back to the office and possibly opening the office back up. And all of that has been put on hold till the end of the year. So we're going to remain in stage 1 where we are now. So we won't see any significant changes to that until probably first quarter of next year, just due to you know, fears of the fall and flu season and possible, you know, outbreaks and kids returning to school and what that's going to mean. So for now, we're just going to stay the course and continue as we are.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions. Mark, can you bring us up to date on the NMDOT cooperative that you talked about in the last meeting regarding the wells? On the
phase of that, which was the West project, we are currently still in talks with New Mexico DOT to enter into the same type of agreement for the east section, and then in the horizon there'll be the middle section. So we are doing design for all 3 sections, and we'll continue to hopefully coordinate with the DOT to be able to put upsize lines, add hydrants, add more line if needed, larger diameter lines. Basically, our overall goal is to create a fire grid within the city of Clovis, and particularly the downtown area, as we start to see movement there with development, businesses moving back into that area, and the need for fire flow for that part of town. So that is also that's something that we're continuing to work on.
Great, thank you. And do you have an update on the contaminated wells that you talked about that has been reported in the media as well, on the 10 contaminated wells? Any further on that?
So right now we continue to monitor those wells. In fact, we just did our last, we did a set for our third quarter set for this year for all of our points of entry into the system, and to include any of those wells that were affected that we had gotten hits on in the past. So just right now we're just continuing to get all of that data and disseminate it, and then go from there, you know, once we have a better idea what we're looking at. And as far as long-term ways to deal with it, you know, part of that is, you know, bringing those wells from Sandia over to North 40, you know, continue to blend, and then, you know, still looking at treatment studies.
And we still don't know the source of that contamination?
We don't, and you know, we are looking at that, continually looking at that. We've got Shoemaker looking at some stuff for us, and continuing trying to figure out, you know, what the source of that might be. And it might be multiple sources, you know, so it's just something that we're continuing to look at.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mark. Good update. Appreciate you being here. Okay, we'll move over to the city update with Mr. Howald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We continue to work on our effluent reuse project, Phase 1D. The elevated storage tank, as you've all witnessed, keeps getting taller. It's actually at the final height, and the steel is scheduled to start arriving this month with the crews coming on site, and so over the next couple of months they'll be constructing the actual tank portion of the elevated storage tank. They've completed all of the pipe work that's associated with it, and so they're just waiting on a couple of meters to arrive, and then they will have the 2 new end users that are available to go on there. Phase 2, the City Commission approved our loan agreement with the Water Trust Board at our last City Commission meeting, and so we'll be working on getting that project closed. We also approved the design work with Bohannon Houston, and so we'll be getting that project kicked off. A couple weeks worth of design, and when I say a couple, I mean probably close to 8 weeks. So we'll hopefully have that out to bid this winter sometime, so that we can get that line extended from Allsups on up to Colonial Park Golf Course, as well as to Gaddis Middle School and to Berry Elementary. We also continue to work with Playa Lakes Joint Venture. They are trying to produce a video that we've been trying to get some coverage done at our local Playa Lakes. However, in March, a little pandemic set in, and so they haven't been able to travel to get here to get to that video shot, but we continue to communicate and work with Playa Lakes Joint Venture. Also, in regards to Playas, we are applying for a grant through the Economic Development Department. It's with the state of New Mexico. It's through their outdoor recreation department that they recently created. We're going to apply for a Playa Education building that we would locate at Goodwin Playas, and that way it teaches the youth or anybody that's out there walking that trail system what the natural process is and the importance that playas play in our region. So it's a project that we've had in mind for a while now. Just no opportunities or available funding sources, and so when this grant application came out, we thought we'd take advantage of that and make an application to that, and so that will be something that's in front of our City Commission at our special meeting this week as well. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it. Number 5, for the good of the order, I believe David Lansford has something he would like to discuss. He is the chairman of the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Last Monday, I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Howalt and the mayor and the chairman of the Water Policy Committee to discuss the REPI application that Cannon Air Force Base is putting together right now. And this particular opportunity to couple with Cannon Air Force Base and the Conservation Fund to secure groundwater is, really timely. For about 8 years, while I served as, mayor for the last 8 years until Mike was, we spent a lot of time on conserving water. We went through NRCS, Playa Lake Joint Venture. We looked at funding resources for securing groundwater. We did a lot of things and really set the stage for what ultimately turned out to be the Water Assurance Plan that the city adopted. The Water Assurance Plan, of course, includes Playa Lake Joint Venture activities, but it also talked about securing water north and west of Cannon Air Force Base in what is referred to as a paleo channel in order to have a groundwater reserve for the future of Clovis, Cannon Air Force Base, and other jurisdictions within eastern New Mexico. This REPI application that's moving forward right now under the local leadership of Jeff Davis. He's employed as a civil engineering employee at Cannon. He's not a military, he used to be, but he's working on this application. He submitted a preliminary application, and it goes through, several steps through Air Force Civil Engineering Command in San Antonio. And if his application gets approved to go to the next level, then, there's additional hope that the funding will be available to convert some of these irrigation farms into dryland operations and reserve their groundwater for domestic use. I mean, that's the ultimate purpose of it. Just as another piece, I mean, when you think about the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority, you think about infrastructure and what's been done over the last, 10, 15 years. The intake structure was built at the reservoir for $16 million. It's sitting there idling. It costs us about $50,000 a year to just O&M on that intake structure. And so right now we're wrapping up, we're 99% complete on Finished Water 2, which connects Cannon Air Force Base with Clovis. And like I said, that was a $30 million project. It's gone extremely well. We came in under budget. Mr. Ortega, our executive director, administrator, has done a fantastic job working with CH2 and our contractor, Oscar Renda, to get a quality product built. So the whole point of the infrastructure, as of about a year ago, we approved a 20-30-40 proposition where the local communities would spend $20 million on infrastructure, the state would spend 30, and the federal government would spend 40. Well, after multiple trips to Washington, D.C. and talking to Commissioner Berman, who is over the Bureau of Reclamation, we convinced her that, we're running out of water. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, there will be a point at some time in the future where, we're doing like Portales did recently, water restrictions. I mean, and we have the policies in place here for the city to, different levels of water security and water usage. But back to the 20-30-40 scenario, we're on schedule to be successful with that proposition. As you know, the city pledged $15 million if the state and the federal government come through. Well, last year, the federal government came through with $15 million. And the state came through with almost $7 million. So there's plenty of opportunity for the state to catch up to their 10-10-10, which would make the $30 million over a 3-year period. And the federal government is kind of ahead of that when you look at the proportional money that we've already received. The city did an outstanding job of stepping up and saying, we're willing to commit to this infrastructure plan. We're successful with this infrastructure. And then we have another stranded asset like we have at Ute Reservoir, $16 million sitting there that we just have to pay O&M on. And so my concern has been for 8 years, how do we secure additional groundwater to put into this interim groundwater project? And that's what it's called. It's not called an infrastructure project. It's called an interim groundwater project, which certainly implies that water will be put into this system. And so over the last 8 years, we've talked to the farmers out there. We've done everything we can to find ways to, get revenue to support securing groundwater. But with this REPI project, and it stands for Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration Program, and they're serious about it. Cannon is very serious about this, and they want to, in fact, their preliminary application put in for $15 million, okay? Now that $15 million could be matched by the Conservation Fund on a 1-to-1 basis and come up with $30 million. Well, the Water Assurance Plan said that in order to secure all that groundwater out there in the Paleo Channel and just take all of it out of production and then make sure that competitive irrigation doesn't take place in areas where water's been reserved. And so this is a huge opportunity. I think that, the iron is really hot, and I think we need to strike. And I'm not sure how to strike. I've talked to Mr. Howalt about, having meetings with Cannon and figuring out what the application process involves. What is going to be required of the local communities in this process? I know when Cannon Air Force Base used the REPI program to secure easements around Melrose Range, that Jeff Davis was involved in that, and they were very successful. It was a several-step process. where they, secured force protection and safety zones and paid landowners not to do certain things on their property. So again, we're at a critical moment here, and I don't know that I've realized it as much as I should have, but today and in the last few weeks, I've realized that, with the COVID deal, it shut down all of our communication. And as I left office, I wanted to continue to work on water related issues, but we've been stymied. And I think we've got to press forward. This REPI application, is not a once-in-a-lifetime deal, but if they're not successful this year, they come back next year and they apply again. But the thing we're up against is the fact that massive amounts of water is being pulled from the aquifer in this area. And the study that was done said that, 1 year of irrigation is 4 years of municipal water. And so what better piece of property that's in proximity to our transmission line to secure additional groundwater? I mean, you can continue to spread out EPCOR's system and pay for more infrastructure, or you can secure some water out there that's adjacent to the transmission line and have that water available when the reservoir can't produce. I mean, several years ago, the Interstate Stream Commission did a study by John Whipple that basically told the interstate stream how much water the reservoir could produce every year and still be sustainable. Well, that study's, dated, but there's evidence to suggest that it wouldn't change much even if you brought new numbers in. But what we've experienced over the last, 10 years or so, 15 years or so, is drought conditions here in eastern New Mexico that, weren't here back in the 80s and 70s. And so my concern is even though it says that 9 out of 10 years the reservoir can produce, I'm not sure that a 10, 15-year drought was calculated into that Whipple study. And so, again, my number one concern is that we still have to have groundwater moving forward. Once we get to the reservoir, we'll still need groundwater as a backup. And not only that, groundwater is so much less expensive than surface water from Ute Reservoir. When you look at the O&M cost to take water from Ute Reservoir and pump it and clean it and make it potable, is almost $9 million a year to move that water and make it potable. So with that as a basis for my argument, groundwater in proximity to our area is always going to be less expensive to deliver. It doesn't need to be cleaned up. It doesn't need to be moved 70 miles. All it needs is chlorination. And so I think the best investment for the future of eastern New Mexico is to secure additional groundwater. Now, why would we want to do that when we have EPCOR? Well, EPCOR is required by law. If they go and buy water rights, they have to put it to beneficial use right away. And so they can't go and bank water, groundwater, like we've talked about doing, and save that water, rest those wells for 4, 5, 6, 10 years, whatever the case may be. They can't do that. But we can, as the city of Clovis or the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority, we can bank water. And we know we're going to need it. We know we're going to need it. There's no question about it. And I know that supply is really an issue that people don't really want to deal with. But we've got to deal with it. And with this REPI opportunity, the iron is hot. And so I know Mr. Howalt has asked for a meeting with Jeff Davis at Cannon and with a phone conference with the folks at AFCEC, which is Air Force Civil Engineering Command. It's an up-chain authority to Jeff Davis, to find out what is required of the local community to maximize the REPI dollars. I know when they did the range out here at Melrose, the state of New Mexico put, matching funds or, cost share. They put some money in that demonstrated to the Department of Defense and the Conservation Fund that the state of New Mexico was serious. And so what I'm asking this committee to do, and I'm asking the mayor and the manager and everybody else, is to have a finance committee meeting and to look at potential revenue sources where you don't have to raise taxes, okay? I think there's revenue sources that can be dedicated to water supply where we don't have to raise taxes. One example among 5 or so that I could mention, and I'll wait on that, but one example is this year, the commission, the Clovis City Commission, has to rededicate the 1/4% for Ute Reservoir. That's a good chunk of money, and that's more than enough money thus far for the city to make its membership contribution to the Water Authority. And so that particular fund for the city has continued to, grow and cash reserve. But what I would like to suggest is that the Finance Committee take up an analysis of what percentage of that 1/4% could be dedicated to supply. And I'll tell you why I think it's a good business proposition. If you went out there and somehow were able to control that water, and the city invested money and they were the qualifying entity that actually owned the right to, pump that water out and sell it to the Water Authority. So a business proposition for Clovis would be to go out there and work with Cannon, the Conservation Fund, and be the qualifying entity for that water supply. And then when the time came to, put that water to beneficial use, you have a revenue source. So if you think about it, the Water Authority then becomes a functional utility, okay? It's actually buying water, and this is an example. It's buying water from Clovis, let's say, and then they turn around and they sell that water to all the members of the authority, which is Clovis again, Portales, Texaco, and Cannon Air Force Base. The Water Authority then has a revenue source where they can mark that water up to get a return on the investment that the city made. And my thinking is that if we can sell enough water out there, we can eliminate to a large degree the annual membership contribution made by the members of the Water Authority. And so if you can generate revenue for the Water Authority, then the city's infrastructure obligation would decline, because then the sale of water and the customers would then start paying, for the water and for the infrastructure. And as long as we look at this as a business proposition, if Clovis is our business and we're the owners of Clovis, we have to make an investment in our future. And what I'm afraid of is that, the apprehension that shies us away from securing a water supply is going to be, our fatal flaw. And with this opportunity with REPI and being able to possibly reallocate a certain percentage of our 1/4% for infrastructure for the Ute Water Project, I think that's just one area of revenue that we could look at. And I know that, we've talked about other things that I've gotten a lot of pushback on. I know that we use the Economic Development Fund to purchase the Wall property. We also use that fund to purchase the Snell property, and it was all to ensure that groundwater wasn't being pumped out too aggressively around Cannon Air Force Base in this region. And so the economic development tax dollars were used, and so the justification for that was job retention. Well, if we don't have a water supply here in Clovis that's adequate to meet, potential growth for our area, then it's job loss and job retention that we're letting go away. And everybody that's invested in this community, whether it's a business or a job or a house or whatever the case may be, and they live here, if we don't have a reliable water supply and we can't quantify that for the next 30, 40 years, we can just say goodbye to economic development on a grand scale. Clovis has tremendous potential to grow, but it's directly related to the water supply that we can provide to customers. And I just think it's imperative that we give serious consideration to identifying revenue sources that could be utilized for securing supply. As I said earlier, the U-Water operational chart, infrastructure. What I'm proposing is you've got infrastructure on one side of the organizational chart and you've got water supply on the other. Now, if the city of Clovis takes the lead on this like they did the infrastructure project, the 20, 30, 40 proposition, and takes the lead on water supply, it can actually be rolled into the authority at some point, okay? So it doesn't have to stay with Clovis. It could actually be, transferred to the authority. Portales could buy an equity position in that water and share in the ownership of it. And so could Texaco and all other members of the authority. But I just think it's very important right now where we are to, have this meeting with Jeff Davis and AFCAC, find out what the timeline is for this application, and get on the calendar and identify where we need to meet, when we need to meet, what the agenda items need to be in order to optimize this REPI application. And I think the more we put in and pledge to this application, the larger sounding cymbal is going to ring at AFCAC when they evaluate this application. And I don't know that we have to put up money right now, but I think we need to be prepared to pledge a certain amount of money to support the REPI application. And I don't think it would be a losing proposition. It would be a transfer of assets from cash to something tangible like water. That's more important than just about anything in our area. So that's my story, and again, my request is to ask the Finance Committee and I know the Mayor and the Mayor Pro Tem are on the Finance Committee, to start discussing what revenue sources we could possibly pledge to this process. I think we're going to make a big mistake if we don't stick our nose in this REPI application and be a stakeholder. We are a stakeholder in this process. They need us just like we need them. And so without further conversation, again, my request is simply to have a Finance Committee to look at some of these revenue opportunities that could be a part of the REPI application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think we all understand the importance of water supply and conserving the groundwater. There's no doubt about it. We've been having a lot of separate meetings, and I think it's really time that we come together and start having meetings together between the authority, the city, and EPCOR, and everybody that's involved in this, and start getting on the same page. I think we've been having a lot of separate meetings, and we're not all coming together with all our ideas. So I think that's important in this process to get this done as quickly as possible, and finding out how much it's going to take to actually for this to happen. I think that's an important issue right now. But does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Lansford?
David, on the REPI application, you said it was $15 million?
That was his preliminary ask that he submitted about 3 weeks ago.
And on that Fed application, does it require a 25% match? Do you know?
That's what we don't know.
Okay.
There's so much misunderstanding because we haven't been able to meet face to face and really hash out the details of this application, what the timelines are, what kind of monetary contribution the communities need to make to optimize those federal dollars. That's why I think Mr. Howalt wants to have the meeting with AFCAC and Jeff Davis and find out more about this application and what's required of the local community. They call it a qualifying entity, okay? And the qualifying entity is what they have to have that entity. It could be NRCS, it could be the state of New Mexico, it could be the New Mexico Land Trust, or it could be the city of Clovis. And what I hate to see happen, Raymond, is that, this whole process goes forward and then somebody outside our jurisdictions here in eastern New Mexico is going to control that water. I want us, if we and benefit from the sale of it and the use of it. And I think it's possible, but we've got to get on the same page with the Air Force. And like I said, I don't know what the difference is between a match and a cost share. They haven't said there's 25% or 10% or 50%. I mean, they haven't said any of that. It'd be nice to know what those percentages are so we could know what kind of money we could come up with in order to optimize this opportunity. So, I mean, if you think of the Department of Defense and 15 from the Conservation Fund, and we had to come up with, single digits in millions between the members of Eastern New Mexico or even Curry County and Clovis working together on something like this, we could take all that land and convert it to dry land farming. Did the wall property, and we saw the benefits to that. Cannon saw the benefits to that. And so if we wait too long, where they're, I don't know, they turn them off when they can't produce at a certain level. And so while some of these wells are still producing, 200, 150 gallons a minute, we need to shut them off, and they need to be the groundwater reserves for Eastern New Mexico when the reservoir doesn't produce.
So the cost share, they're asking Clovis for a cost share or the authority?
They're not asking us anything, and they're not really giving us timeline details or what kind of money is required on the local. How much? But we need to find out, and then after this meeting with Air Force Civil Engineering Command, maybe we can have an idea and identify revenue sources that can meet that.
So there's still an unknown to the puzzle, basically.
There's unknown. Table as a stakeholder.
Because my thought, if we could get or assist them with the RIPI application for the feds at $15 million, could we not use Water Trust Board money for a match?
Well, that's possible, but I've been to the Water Trust, and some of the pushback is, you guys are double and triple dipping here.
Yeah.
Now, we could look for a legislative allocation instead of through the Water Trust Board, but again, we just need more information, and we need to be a stakeholder that's aggressively at the table on this opportunity.
Thank you, I agree.
And I think that's what I was talking about before, where we all have to come together to get some answers and be able to make some decisions. Yeah. So, any other questions? Mr. Howald, do you want to address maybe and update the committee on
Well, certainly. I mean, we've been in contact with Cannon Air Force Base and Mr. Davis, and as Mr. Lansford said, we're trying to understand the application process and what he submitted for in his preliminary application. So as soon as I hear back from him, trying to get schedules coordinated, we definitely plan to meet and see what we need to do and to assist in the process so we can have a successful application. This, as Mr. Lansford said, could be huge for our area. I mean, $15 million on top of the funding that we're getting out of the Bureau of Rec for the Water Utility Authority. I mean, that's a lot of commitment to our area and to our region through federal funds. So we'll continue to work with Cannon Air Force Base and their individuals and AFCAC and see what we need to do to make sure the application is good.
Great, thank you. Mr. Worthy, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No.
No, you're okay? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, go back there. Do you have any comments or a short update that you'd like to provide?
I'm fine unless you like
You
to
okay?
make it, you have to do it.
It's up to you.
Okay. Is the podium-
Well, mic's not on, so if you go back to the table if you would.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and thank you for this time. I'll make it brief. We are staying very busy. As the chairman mentioned, we are at 99%, I say 99.9% on the easement properties. We ran out of time for seeding And so we're going to wait and do it in the fall, so we have a better better opportunity for stand. We have several projects ahead of us this new fiscal year, including a construction project going to Portales, connecting from Finished Water 2 to Portales. We have a little over $25 million committed for that and authorized for that project. We also are working north from Finished Water 2 to the proposed treatment facility and bringing that up to 90% engineered. Also, we are going to get going on easement acquisition on that part. That's 16 miles north of just where Chavez Housing is, straight north to the proposed treatment facility. We're also committed up to $100,000 towards Texaco and looking at the Texaco lateral. As you probably know, Texaco has been hurting this summer with meeting the demand with their community. And so the board voted to try to get that project or that lateral process going. So we will be doing some planning stages, environmental, and some high-level cost for that lateral on that. So lots of work for us. We are working towards holding a special meeting next Monday with the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Board. We did get notice from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation on Friday that they would like to close out the Finished Water 3 grant agreement, meaning approve it and have it signed by all authorities, and that is at $36.6 million, which will be going towards Finished Water 3, the pipeline to Portales. And that's it.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Ortega? Okay, if not, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update. Okay, date and time of next meeting will be 8:30 Tuesday, October 13th. And with that, we're adjourned.